Our next guest is Kevin Ezell, and Kevin is the president of the North American Mission Board. Kevin, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity. Always good to talk with you.
Yeah, I'm assuming that you're in your home in the Atlanta area?
I'm in my office in the Atlanta area, yeah.
Very good. Well, let's get started. We're curious about how things have gone with the North American Mission Board in 2020. And so how have you navigated all that's happened this year?
Yeah, but it's just like everybody else. It's like every day you have to call a different audible. So it's like everyone else. You have to expect the unexpected and just roll with it. But we're very grateful. You know, in the midst of what has been an incredible challenge, it stretched people in ways they otherwise would never have been stretched. And so that part we're celebrating.
Yeah, talk about that. How have they been stretched?
Yeah, well, one instance, I can give you several, but one was there was an 80-year-old bivocational pastor, and his church runs about 25 to 30. Well, the pandemic hit, and they just went completely dark. You know, no service, no anything. His granddaughter said, "Well, Papa, you should do Facebook Live." He said, "What's that?" And so she showed him what Facebook Live was. So he sent an email out to all of his people and said, "We'll do Facebook Live on Sunday." They had over 80 show up on Facebook Live. Huh. And he's like, "Where's this been all my life?" You know. So, I mean, that's just a small illustration of what it takes. Sometimes, you know, we are forced to make decisions and forced to be a little bit more progressive than we typically would be.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious about the Easter offering, the Annie Armstrong Easter offering. You know, this hit just before Easter, and more than half of your budget comes in that month. And I recall talking to you and you saying, "Hey, I didn't know if this was generous or risky or maybe not so smart." You said, "We're going to stop our promotion of the Annie Armstrong Easter offering." Talk about that decision and tell about what happened.
Yeah, it was right in the bullseye. I mean, it could not have hit it more directly. And I know what it's like to be a pastor, and you have all these anxieties going through, especially in something like this, no one expected. And the last thing they need is another responsibility or another even, guilt of, I need to get my people. They just need to get their people focused on assembling as a body and not have the pressure. I felt like that often an extra offering would bring. So it is 50% of what we operate on. And for us, that's $60 million a year. And that meant we went into shift mode where we downshifted to expecting, maybe a 50% hit, and ended up being hit by 20%, which is about $12 million. But we made a commitment to keep all of our missionaries on the field, to continue to fund our planters and continue to fund evangelism, and to plug holes where we need to plug holes. And so we were able to do that and basically put everything dead in the water for a few months. And there wasn't a lot of activities going on in March, April, and May, if you remember. Yeah. So that really helped make sure to recoup some expenses there.
Now, I'm sure you had to make some decisions and budget cuts. And I know how budget cuts work. It's good stewardship unless it's my budget. And then it's no fun. What were some of the values or principles that you used in order to make those hard decisions?
Yeah, and what was ironic, Tim, is like 2 years ago, I went to a staff meeting of my executive leaders and said, I played the little clip off of Apollo 13 movie where it said, "Failure is not an option. We've got to get these guys home." I love that movie. Mm-hmm. And I love watching it the second and third and fourth time because I know they get back okay. But that sense of failure is not an option. And I told myself, I said, "Look, something happened. We lost a third of our revenue. I want you to go back to your office, come back in 2 hours and tell me what you would operate on." Well, that was 2 years ago. And we somewhat had a game plan on what to cut and what not to cut. We'd had to increase it a bit. But our principle was, one, we did not want to cut any missionaries, make any drastic decisions over what we think will be a one-time, hopefully a one-time hit. And so we didn't want to cut personnel on the field. Any cuts, we wanted to experience those in Alpharetta. And that was just to get through the year. And then now looking and budgeting, we're on course to hope, not cut any missionaries still. And we just have to be very intentional and strategic. And so, for instance, like things like evangelism. In evangelism, we want to provide money for all the states to do evangelism, all the non-South states. But we want to be very strategic. And you guys don't have a problem with that because you, by nature, are very strategic because you're IMB background and so forth. But not everyone has a plan, and we just want everyone to have a strategic plan, and then we'll help fund those dollars to make sure every dollar people give goes directly to an evangelism training or activity, if you would.
Yeah, and speaking on those two issues, we're so grateful for having basically all the church planting funds that we could request and for having all the evangelism funds that we could request. We got our smart guys thinking of projects that would properly steward those resources for 2021 and 22. And we're so grateful for your help in all that. We can do a lot more with your help than we could do just on our own.
Well, you're kind to say that we're all better off together, and it's just fun doing it with partners like yourself. We're a big family though, and there are over 42 state conventions. I just wish they were all more like ours.
Yeah, so let's go down the road just a second with that. I know that in 21 and 22, some of the hard decisions it's been connected with a few of the state conventions, and there's been some pushback about that. And how have you dealt with that challenge, and what do you expect to happen in the future?
Yeah, we've been on a very laser-like process for 10 years. The convention voted back in 2010 to do something called the GCR. Over 85% of the convention voted on it. And we've been laser focused at laying that out for 10 years. This is simply the 9th and 10th year. It's just like somebody looking back and they don't like the election in 2016. They're still ticked about that. Or something. It's something that happened. And all we're simply doing is helping. The strongest conventions are those that are self-sustained. And again, you've led your state to do that. We want other states to do the exact same thing. They pay for administrative costs. We always want to plant churches in Iowa, and we always want to help with evangelism. But some states, and here's how it's it can get complicated. But let me just do a 30,000 foot if I can.
All right.
We have 42 different state conventions. When we had a budgeted amount where we just sent states certain amounts, we had some states that left money. They didn't use it because they didn't have a strategy, so they didn't have nowhere to spend the money. So they left millions of dollars on the table, like $2.6 million in 1 year. That's not just one state, but several. While, on the other hand, you have some states that are very strategic that run out of money when you did it the budgeted way. And so now we said, look, we're just going to put it in one pot. You show us a strategy, and then we'll provide the funding. Therefore, the ones who have the strategy get more money. The ones who do not, and quite honestly, I mean, in some of these states, especially some in the far out west, they just didn't have the use for the resources that other states might have. And we're just trying to be as strategic. We take very serious every dollar every Southern Baptist gives, and we feel like it's our responsibility to be good stewards of that money and be very strategic.
Yeah, and I just love that the North American Mission Board is focusing on church planting and evangelism and relief ministries. And I really think in terms of reaching new communities, those are the ministries that we really need to put our resources into.
Well, actually, and you know this, Tim, that 1/4 of the baptisms in Iowa happen from churches that have been planted since 2010. Yeah. You could go to, state after state where we've made church planting a focus. That's been the case. 1/4 to 1/3. In some cases in Canada, we had a special one. Just obviously, it's a country of 34 million people, but over 55% of their baptisms came from churches planted since 2010.
Wow.
So we're very thankful. The focus on church planting is working. And it's not about how many churches you plant per year. That's what I'd encourage every pastor in Iowa to understand. It's not how many you plant each year. Because if you say, well, no, that really is important to me, then how many do you want? You want 50? I can show up with 50. We can throw enough money around to come up with 50. But what you want is our churches are going to survive and be healthy. And how many are in existence 5 years down the road? And our average is over 80% now. And so we're focused on the long-term health, not just a short-term. You can launch anything, but you really want it to set sail, and 5 years is a good barometer of that.
Yeah. You may or may not be aware of, I don't think you are because it just happened this morning. Our executive board made the final decision to increase our cooperative program giving in 2021 from 50% to 60%.
That's incredible.
And we're just excited about the partnership. And we've been able to do that, kind of sharpen our pencils. And we've actually added a few staff people in the last year or two. So we have enough money to carry out our mission here in Iowa, but yet still have some left over to support North American Mission Board and IMB and the other entities.
That's incredible. I sure hope you get that word out and you do an article on it or something to make sure people know, because what you're doing, you're at the cutting edge of what I hope to see other conventions follow.
All right, let's talk for a minute about 2020. What are some of the highlights and progress that you've seen across North America or within the North American Mission Board?
Well, obviously, 2020 has been a challenge in many ways, but what we've seen is an incredible multiplication. We have churches that are planting churches that are planting churches. Just yesterday, we had a church in Florida that's 3 years old that launched its first church plant. And in order for us to really reach North America, it's all about multiplication. I was just on a call this morning with almost 100, right at 100 church planters from New England. When I first started 10 years ago, I met with the most strategic church planters in New England, and there were 5 of them. We could fit in a booth. And today to have, like I said, almost 100. And what I was telling them is it should be by multiplication. What will be in 10 more years just blows our mind. And that's the focus. And that's what I'm most excited about, is that churches are seeing that. It's not about planting a church or growing a church. It's about reaching a city and sharing the gospel with everyone. And when you really have that mindset, it's more than just your church. You're thinking city, state, and world.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Wow, that's a great example, a great illustration of multiplication. Let's talk about 2021 and beyond. What are some things you're working on for next year and the next few years?
Yeah, one of the things we're really excited about is a focus on collegiate ministry. And we've been focused on collegiate church planting. My word, Iowa is the launching pad of that. But we also have many ministers on campuses all over North America. And there are actually almost 80,000 Baptist ministries, if you will, that we want to engage in Send Relief and Send Network and kind of have that whole SALT model really go into all over North America to get the students very intentionally graduating and spending the first 2 years engaging in some way. The second is an emphasis on Hispanic church planting. If you look at the population increases, Hispanics are by far the highest geographic expanding demographic, if you will, in North America. And so we must focus on, more church planting in our Hispanic community. And then ongoing Send Relief efforts, where we're adding at least 7 to 8 more Send Relief ministry centers. And so the pastors would understand it's about helping your people see how to do things where they are, model and multiply. We have national ministry centers, but everything we do is modeled so they can multiply where they are. When I was a pastor, I took my people to Guatemala, and we went inner city Guatemala and an area called the Dump in Guatemala. And some of my guys got such a heart for missions, they went back to Louisville, Kentucky, where I pastored, and started a homeless ministry. And they for so many years had looked over that and not even saw that as an opportunity. But it took a trip to Guatemala to get them to see a need right beneath their noses. That's all we're trying to do in Send Relief, is help people see the need somewhere else so that they can more clearly see the need where they are.
Oh, that's wonderful. Let's go back to the collegiate ministry for a minute. And, the affiliated churches with Baptist Convention of Iowa are connected with thousands of students in Iowa and around the Midwest. And so imagine talking to a graduating senior who has an interest in ministry and giving his life for the kingdom. What advice would you have for a college student at that age?
Yeah, well, senior, we like to get them as a freshman so we can kind of condition them with summer missions and that. But what I
Yeah.
would tell a senior is, look, be strategic. At least be open to the first 2 years of being strategic. If you're going to be an engineer, be an engineer. But when you go to Pittsburgh or Philadelphia or LA or San Diego or wherever it may be, let us help you connect and be very missional. Sometimes they think they can only be missional if they're a church planner in some way, but there's so many other ways to do that, to come alongside a church planner. And we can help match you up. We would like to be eHarmony Go Church Planning for a senior, to let us know where you're headed, and we can connect you and give you 3 or 4 options, and you pick. But we just want you to be very strategic as you launch. It's the most critical. When you leave college and you launch into life, it's an incredible opportunity now that you rarely have this much flexibility in your life ever, and we want you to make the very most of it.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, in Iowa, we want to be good partners with the North American Mission Board and the other partners and entities. Do you have any advice or suggestions to some of our pastors in how to stay connected and supporting the North American Mission Board?
Well, you do. Obviously, you guys are incredible partners. We're grateful for their faithfulness. That they just continue to pray, and we want to come alongside churches to help, and pastors to help their churches take that next missional step. And I just want pastors to know, and you do this, you remind them continually. It's all about taking the next step. If they're on a 1 to 5 scale, if they have a member's on a 1, we'd love to see them move to a 2. And if they're on a 2 scale, move to a 3. And you can't expect overnight incredible exponential growth, but one step at a time, you can move them to pray for a planner. Then they may want to participate and go see a planner and worship in a service. And then the next time they may want to serve in some way, and just gradually work them there. And so the best way that they could possibly support us is through prayer, and then to know we want to be a partner to help them help their people take that next step.
Very good, very good. When you say next step, you remind me of our friend Will Mancini, and I
That's right.
understand he has a partnership with the North American Mission Board. Is there anything you can say about that?
Absolutely. It's very strategic next step leadership. And for any pastor that would like to be a part of that, we're all constantly, hopefully, sharpening our skills. I've just been at NAMB for 10 years and kind of realigning some things and looking at the next 10 years and trying to get some objective feedback from people on how I can improve my leadership. We're all in the process of hopefully sharpening our skills, and Will is being made available because of an opportunity or partnership we have with NAMB to help every pastor do that. It's really available to every pastor at some level, and it's one of those things where you can get as involved in it as you want, or just have him send little leadership tips occasionally. It's totally up to you. We're not being invasive by any means at all, but as much as you would want, they'll be there for Will to come alongside any Iowa pastor and help you become a better leader for your people, and hopefully even for your family.
All right, very good. And I think we'll have some information for pastors as that rolls out so that they can jump on in. Let's fly up a little bit higher. And you mentioned 10 years, and I know you just crossed the 10-year mark. And if you were giving advice to 10-year younger Kevin Ezell on what to expect, now that you have a little perspective, what would you say were some lessons for him to learn, or for some challenges for him to watch out for?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I underestimated how relational everything is, and it's trust is born out of relationship. You can't have that overnight. It takes more than one fruit basket delivery to build trust.
Yeah.
And with a sense of time. And so, timing is everything. People often say how fast you do things, how slow you do things. My tendency is to do them fast, which sometimes helps, sometimes hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you go slow, that sometimes can help and sometimes can hurt. The challenging thing about I love being a pastor, And what I loved about being is I just love the relational part of it. I like sit down at Cracker Barrel or some restaurant with my guys, my deacons or leaders, and if they had questions, I could answer it. And here, it's much more difficult when people are so far away. They don't feel like they have access to you, and so it's harder to explain to them your intentions or your motives or where you're trying to head when it's really all over North America. So understanding how to communicate to that many people, has been the learning curve that I've had because I couldn't rely just on sitting down at Cracker Barrel and when I pastored people, they trusted my motives. They didn't second guess my motives anyway. Yeah. And so that's been the hardest part, doing this.
All right, very good. I have one more question before we wrap up, and let's go back to state convention partnerships. How do you see that evolving in the next 5 years or so? What are some things we need to do a little bit more of, and what are some things that you think will pass by?
No, well, I think we're going to know a lot in 5 years. The fact when people ask me, "What about state conventions?" and the key next question is, which one? Some are going to be very strategic. Some are not going to be very strategic, and some will go away. And they basically will all decide that on their own. But it's impossible to. It's just all going to depend on the specific convention and their leadership. And so they're typically as strong as their leader. And we just need healthy. You have to remember, we're here to reach North America. We're here to plant churches and to reach North America. And sometimes we get so focused on the structure that we forget the strategy. And you got to have structure sometimes to meet the strategy, but you've done a great job of keeping your convention focused on a proper balance. And so we just need more conventions to learn from that example. And so who knows? I think there will be state conventions. There will be all sorts of different types of it, structures, but some will be healthier, some will be the same, and some will not be there.
All right, very good. Well, as we wrap up, and you think you're going to be speaking with several of our key leaders and pastors and elders and deacons and members of Baptist Convention of Iowa churches, is there anything else that you would like to say to them while you have a few minutes in front of them?
Man, thank you so much. Yeah, first of all, the IMB is way overrated. Way overrated. I focus on the North American. If we lose the homeland, I'm just kidding. Yeah. I'm so thankful to be able to partner with guys like Paul Chitwood and IMB, and we have such a great relationship. I just want you to know that you have people that God's placed leading entities as well as your state convention that want to work together. I firmly believe we are stronger together. We're a big family. It's a big family with over 16, 17 million people a part of it. And we're going to have some crazy uncles occasionally. But I would just encourage you to round up, don't round down. And to know that, man, God is doing some significant things in North America and around the world because we're better and stronger together.
I've quoted that before, that don't round up, don't round down. Not everybody understands what you're referring to. Explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think sometimes, when you don't know somebody or don't know a whole situation, you just automatically just assume the worst. And where I would say round up is, look, assume the best and then find out the rest. I've tried to teach my kids, you don't know the whole story, and I also remind myself is you don't know what you don't know, and it's just easier to veer south or veer north. And I just say, always give someone the benefit of the doubt. It's like we're guilty until proven innocent in today's society, where it's, hey, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. They're innocent until proven that they're a scoundrel. And so, I just know that I know Paul at the IMB, and my mom can vouch for me. I know the seminary presidents. Those are guys they're guys who want to please the Lord. They have quiet times. And they're seeking God. But perfect, none of us are. But are they people who are godly and doing the very best they can? They are.
Yep.
And we could not be more thankful to partner with Iowa Baptist.
Yeah, very good. I noticed you deliberately left off Russell Moore. Was there a reason for that?
No, I always include him with the smart guys, you know, in the seminary. So, no, obviously, I love Russ. He was actually preached one of the services at Highview where I pastored for years, and we had multiple campuses, and I would preach 3 services and then leave and go do another campus, and he would stay and do the 4th service at Highview. So, no, I love Russ.
So you got started just before I did, and I still remember as I was getting started with the Baptist Convention of Iowa, you calling and just to encourage me and invite warm partnership between the Baptist Convention of Iowa and the North American Mission Board. And we've had that, and I'm really grateful for that. You talked about relationship. I'm glad we have a good relationship. And I'm grateful for your strategic leadership. And you know what strategy is, right? It's easy to know what to do. It's hard to know what to stop doing and all the challenge of that. And you've done that so well. And we, on behalf of the Baptist Convention of Iowa, want to thank you for your service at NAMB and for being part of our annual meeting this year.
Well, thank you, Tim. Grateful for Iowa Baptist. I'm very grateful for you, your friendship, and may you never retire.
All right. Very good.